Banks are preparing for a wave of defaults, but it doesn't end there. In fact, that's only the beginning. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. In today's video, we are going to look at what's happening in the financial system. That'll be the nucleus. And then we're going to start going around and understanding the bigger picture. In fact, if there are failures, if there is a crisis at some point in the future, how you will be directly impacted. It doesn't happen to happen today or tomorrow or next week or even next year, but understand that this bubble is getting so massive that there won't be a corner it won't touch. Let me tell you, remember, when you're blowing up one of those big bubblicious gums, as you blow that up, it gets thinner and thinner and thinner, and suddenly it makes a mess all over your face. Just like this fast food inflation over the last 10 years, you could see that has gone up. And this is a great marker of what's been happening over the last while as people are paying more for the same stuff. In fact, in this case here, the stuff's getting smaller. And you can look at it. The average person, this is about Gen X, but what they're talking about is simply that people do not have what they used to. You look at any generation. Look, this is just saying Gen X, they are now turning 59 and a half. They could start withdrawing money. This is an example, the proportion of savers who say they're on track with their retirement. Gen X doesn't feel that to be the case. Maybe they didn't have the advantages of the boomers, where you look at your income to, price to income ratios. The Gen Zs of even millennials, they're suffering in their own right, not being able to afford anything. And so Gen X is kind of stuck in the middle. Look, distressed property buyers seek out exceptional bargains. This is going on here. It could take place in the United States, Canada, or anywhere else. Looking at this, what we have are properties, commercial real estate that are in a world of hurt. Now, Finance Friday crew, we've talked about this a lot before. Shout outs to Spartan. And what you can see is that in some cases, they're having these commercial properties with nobody, absolutely nobody, no tenants in them, simply waiting and seeing what happens. They're just holding on. We're talking about, in some cases, grade A properties, some of the most valuable properties in the city, and they're just boarded up. They're not going to bring their rents down. They're just leaving it there. Now, I guess they have faith longer term. We'll see what happens. But these properties, in many cases, are actually distressed and they're trying to find a buyer, but that's not happening. So just look at it and understand what's happening, with whatever information we have publicly available. That leads us into the big news of today. Banks are expecting a wave of mortgage defaults. Economists say a credit crunch could hurt us all. This is referring to Canada, but understand that this applies to many, many countries around the world. But just let's take this, piece of data and we'll start moving in, and I'll show you why this is important for everybody, no matter where you live. Tens of thousands of vulnerable households will renew their mortgages in 2026 at significantly higher rates, pushing Canada towards a recession in a worst case scenario. What they are talking about here, if you got yours in, 2020, 2021, where a lot of people were starting to move, right? Oh no, we got to get out of the cities. Let's move into the, then back and beyond, places we never would have gone before. We got to hide. Yeah, 2020 and 2021, if they got a 5-year fixed, it works different in from the United States, where you'll typically get between a 3-year and a 5-year mortgage, but it's paid over that 25 years. So these people here, they're going to be in trouble. It's not a worst case scenario, all right? Unless the central bank just starts cutting rates back down to zero. And you can't necessarily do that without creating mass inflation. Then that's another problem. So they have to balance this. The mortgage crisis has hit Toronto homeowners hard. Household debt is near record levels. Unemployment is inching upwards, creating a precarious environment for over-leveraged homeowners. Already, some are losing their homes. Mortgage delinquencies and defaults are expected to continue their trending upward as homeowners face mortgage renewals in 2025, 2026. So you get that 5-year fixed term. In many cases, other people did variable. And you know what's interesting about those variables? So think about this. Your payment might be steady. Okay, let's say you're paying $5,000 a month, $2,000 a month, whatever the number is. Oh, you're paying $5,000, but slowly but surely that actually is simply more and more and more and more of that being interest. So there are some people today, many people, that are paying exclusively interest. That's their own, it's an interest only payment. They haven't been paying principal down in years. They're renting. And rent versus buy. Oh no, buying ownership is better. These people aren't, they're just renting it, basically. Okay? Canada's banking regulator recently named mortgage renewal as one of the top financial risks facing the country. All the 6 major banks in Canada are bracing for more defaults. They're putting aside loan loss provisions. We've talked about this with all the U.S. banks in 2020. They were doing this too. It's basically like a rainy day fund. An increase of $1 billion since last year. The crisis will be devastating for homeowners, yes, but the fallout won't end there. And that's when it starts to get interesting. This is where we need to start putting our thinking caps on and start to understand how this broadens out. As more homeowners default, the banks will be forced to put more capital aside to cover more bad loans, creating the risk of a shock to the lending system. Worst case, it will force the banks and the lenders into a credit crunch, a decline in lending activity brought on by a sudden shortage of funds. With a country, Canada, already the 3rd highest household debt in the world, it becomes harder for people to access the credit from the banks. You get that tightening, you get recession, and so on. That's what's going on right here and right now. You've got a problem. Look, a shocking number. Total mortgage balance reaching severe delinquency exceeds $1 billion for the first time in Ontario. This is, remember, we're talking different populations, 1/10 the population. So you can add another 0 on these things. This is significant. If it was US, it would be another 0 on it, right? You could see people cutting back and so on. They're trying to trim their expenses because everything's going crazy. Understand, if you think you need to be at a certain level, you got to be twice that in order for you to be doing okay. It's got to be twice where you thought. This is just showing mortgage in arrears trending up. We're still lower than we were before. Don't get me wrong, right? Like, we got to understand, but it is trending up, and they're suggesting that they can't come down to that 0% interest rates we did before. Large mortgage payments loom. Look at it across the spectrum. People got to pay more than they did before. That doesn't take a genius to figure out. But the point is, they can't cut down to 0 without creating this mass inflation. People take to the streets. Then you got some serious problems. Recession fears are growing. Who knows what's going to happen with that if they even admit it. And you're looking at a debt to income ratio that's near 170%. Like, it's just unbelievable. It would never be paid. So what happens here? Well, they're telling you consistently, and this is the case of California, we need to be prepared to conserve energy. There's going to be too much demand on the grid, right? And so what happens here is that we've taken on too much, and we've basically maximized everything because it's a debt-based system, and we've hit the absolute border. And what occurs is, in fact, you start to see cutbacks, rations. You start to see austerity. You start to see civil unrest. You start to see problems between one group and another. They start to dislike each other very much. Why? Because one points the finger there, one points the finger there. This is going to start happening more and more. You have this rise of the restaurant robots, Chipotle, Sweetgreen, and others bet on automation. Chains experiment with machine helpers like Flippy, Chippy, and Avocado as they face increasing labor costs. I love the Wall Street Journal finally putting them all together into one. I think people thought I was joking. Actually, some people did. They thought I was actually joking about this. These are real things. Flippy, Chippy, and Avocado. Basically, they are saying that you're going to have a different world. So imagine you're competing against the robots. You're competing in a world in which they're going to get the energy. The data centers for AI will get the energy. Like they're going to get the resources, and you got to prepare for the fact that you can't even pay your bills. You understand here? You understand what's going on? What's new? Well, let's talk about this. There's a change from west to east. We know that to be the case. I talked about it a lot. And this is the share of global GDP, as they put in brackets PPP. It's the purchasing power parity. G7 and the BRICS Plus. So, just all I'm trying to say with this is that more and more change. We get more growth coming from this BRICS Plus. That's where the growth is happening, and that's where the growth will happen. I didn't say, it'll be the biggest economy or whatever, but the growth is coming from there. Why? Because they're still building, they're still developing. It's not as a mature economy, right? It's not developed. We have developing nations. They need more resources. They need more stuff to consume. Okay, so that's where the growth is going to take place. And they're also saying, oh yeah, by the way, we need less US dollars now. You know that. So something's changing there as well. Then we have things like this, 0% financing on a new car. Deals are back on some models. And I just thought it was interesting going back to this, enticing people. Come on, we need your business, right? And then this one, interesting for the Business Sunday, for my people on the live sessions on Sunday. Check this out. Valuations of startups have quietly rebounded to all-time highs. Some investors say the slump is over. It goes in more detail. But the point with this is that we're in a different world in terms of, financing. It's not 0% cash anymore, but the stock market, everything, the enthusiasm is there as if we're basically back to those levels. So the enthusiasm is there, and that's important. That's an important aspect. So what's happening overall? What's going on here? We know that for one reason or another, we are being pushed into a crisis. This crisis is literally going to make a world of difference in the vast majority of people's lives. There's going to be something called a middle class, and there's going to be very few people as part of it. It will be a forgotten memory because most people are going to be in the bottom rung, and then there's going to be this small group on top. And yeah, there is a middle class, but that will shrink and shrink and shrink. And you got to understand this, and you have to take the circumstances into your own hands. If you don't, you will be swallowed whole. That's what's happening here. That's what they're doing intentionally. If people get aware of this, they can start to make changes. What can you do? Two things: pillars of prosperity. You do a search, pillars of prosperity, the money GPS. In that, I talk about the two things. One pillar, increase your income as best you can. Number two is providing yourself with self-sufficiency, okay? These two things are instrumental. Now, we got to be educated, of course. We have to stay informed. That's true, yes, but we can only spend so much time because imagine, like, what is it, Indiana Jones or whatever, when the room is like being compacted in and you're in there, you see it's getting compacted. Well, I can wait all the way to the last second and then, hit the special switch or whatever. Or I can start taking action now. It's up to you. What do you want to do? Start to take the actions now. Don't just sit there. Don't just go on and click the next video. You got to take action today. Do whatever you think is right. Upskilling, learning, take the skills you have right now, apply them to a business if you can. If you want to know more about the things that I do now, I talk about this on the Finance Friday session. I get into a lot more details. It's very different in a way, way more detail. I'm willing to share a lot more information on Finance Friday. On the Business Sunday Live, that's where we learn about building an online business. These two things, so much more detail, over 2 hours. As I'm recording this video, we spend basically 2.5 hours. Okay, doing the business. I go through demos. How do you find products? here it is, step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We get into all that. Nobody does the way that I do it, and certainly nobody gives that much time to their subscribers. Why? Because I appreciate everybody. So if you want more information, link at the top of the description. Yeah, you've been seeing me once per week. I want to thank you for being here. Each and every week, I'm going to try to come back for a video. I've now been busy with all my other businesses that need my attention, and I've been neglecting. So that's just the way it goes. If you appreciate it, hit the thumbs up button, and I'll see you next time. Take care.